He left us for his perfect life. Now he's in jail, and we're thriving." The first rays of the sun slipped through the curtains, casting a golden hue over the modest yet cozy living room. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted from the kitchen, where Linda Hastings was preparing breakfast. Her 17-year-old son, Michael, sat at the small wooden table, absorbed in his calculus homework. "Michael, you've been at that for half an hour. Eat something before it gets cold," Linda said, placing a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of him. Michael looked up, his blue eyes sparkling with a mix of determination and mischief. "I'm almost done, Mom. Just one more problem." Linda smiled, brushing a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. Michael had inherited her work ethic, a trait that had helped her navigate the challenges of single parenthood. Although her husband James had not officially left her, his long absences and dwindling financial support had made her feel like she was on her own. Their home in Greenwich, Connecticut, was modest but warm, reflecting Linda's resourcefulness. Despite her busy schedule as an accountant, she had created a space where Michael felt safe and supported. "Fine," she said with a mock sigh. "But if you're late for school, don't blame me." As she sat down to sip her coffee, Linda glanced at her phone. A string of emails awaited her attention, most of them from clients at the small firm where she worked. "Anything interesting today?" Michael asked, finally setting his pencil down. Linda shook her head. "Just the usual. Though I might have to review some reports for one of your dad's companies. His office sent them over last night." Michael frowned. "You still do that? After everything?" "It's business, honey. I'm good at what I do, and they pay me for it. That's what matters." But deep down, Linda couldn't shake the unease that had been building over the past few months. Something about James's financial dealings felt off, though she had no concrete evidence to prove it. The drive to Greenwich Private School was peaceful as usual. The town's quiet streets were lined with trees, their bare branches dusted with frost. Michael hummed softly to himself in the passenger seat, his chessboard tucked under one arm. "Big match today?" Linda asked, glancing at him as they stopped at a red light. "Not really, just practice. But Coach says I might make captain next year." Linda smiled, proud of her son's accomplishments. "That's great, Mike. You've worked hard for it." Michael's face lit up, but he quickly turned serious. "Do you think Dad would come to a tournament if I asked him?" The question hit Linda like a punch to the gut. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her mind racing. "I don't know, honey," she said carefully. "You know how busy he's been." Michael didn't respond, but his silence spoke volumes. As they pulled into the school parking lot, Linda tried to shake off the lingering tension. She reached over to ruffle Michael's hair. "Go win a game for me, okay?" Michael grinned. "I will." Linda watched him walk away, his backpack slung over one shoulder, before heading to work. Linda's office was on the 7th floor of a sleek, modern building downtown. As she stepped into the elevator, her phone buzzed with a new email. It was from Jennifer Brown, her supervisor. "Linda, I need you to review the financial statements for Elite Development Group. Something doesn't add up. Let's discuss at lunch." Linda's stomach churned as she read the email. Elite Development Group was James's company. She'd handled their accounts before, but Jennifer's message hinted at trouble. By the time she reached her desk, Linda's professional instincts had kicked in. She opened the file Jennifer had shared, her trained eyes scanning the numbers. At first glance, everything seemed normal. But as she delved deeper, inconsistencies began to emerge. "Why is their revenue so inflated this quarter?" she thought, frowning. Linda's thoughts were interrupted by Jennifer's voice. "What do you think?" Linda looked up to see her boss standing by her desk, her expression serious. "There's definitely something off," Linda said. "The profit margins are too high, and some of the expense entries look like placeholders." Jennifer nodded. "I thought so too. Keep digging. If there's anything shady going on, we need to report it." That evening, Linda sat at the dining table with her laptop, her mind racing as she pieced together the discrepancies in the Elite Development Group's accounts. Michael was at the kitchen counter, working on a chess puzzle. "Mom," he said, breaking the silence. Are you okay?" Linda forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just work stuff." Michael studied her for a moment before returning to his puzzle. "If you need help, I'm pretty good at finding patterns." Linda chuckled. "Thanks, Mike. I'll keep that in mind." But her smile faded as soon as Michael turned away. She knew she was on the verge of uncovering something big. Something that could change everything. Snow fell softly outside the windows of Linda's home as she and Michael decorated their Christmas tree. The living room was warm and inviting, the fireplace crackling with a gentle glow. "Careful with that ornament, Mike," Linda said as her son reached for a delicate glass angel. "I got it," Michael replied, carefully placing the angel near the top of the tree. "Perfect." Linda smiled, her heart swelling with love for her son. Despite everything, they had built a life together filled with warmth and support. Just as they finished decorating, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Michael said, running to the door. Linda followed, curious. A delivery driver handed Michael a white envelope. "It's from Dad's company," Michael said, reading the label. Linda's heart sank. She took the envelope, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside were 3 items: a set of divorce papers, a photograph, and a letter. The photograph showed James with a young woman holding a baby. They stood in a luxurious penthouse, the Manhattan skyline visible through the windows. The letter was written in James's familiar handwriting. "Dear Linda, thank you for your years of support, but I've moved on. The house is being sold, and I won't be providing any further assistance. I wish you and Michael the best." Linda stared at the letter, her mind reeling. She barely noticed Michael peering over her shoulder. "Mom," he said, his voice calm but firm, "we can fight this. We have the evidence we need." Linda looked at her son, surprised by the determination in his voice. "What do you mean?" Michael pointed to the photograph. "That penthouse, the baby, the woman, it all proves Dad's been hiding things. And you've already found problems with his company's finances, right?" Linda nodded slowly, realization dawning on her. "Then let's expose him," Michael said. "Together." Linda couldn't sleep that night. Michael's words echoed in her mind. "We can fight this." Sitting at the kitchen table, she laid out everything she had: the inconsistencies in James's company finances, the letter, the photograph. She hesitated, unsure if she should involve her son further. But Michael was clever, observant, and most of all, determined. Early the next morning, she found Michael already in the living room, setting up his chessboard. "Mom," he said without looking up, "I've been thinking. Dad always told me chess teaches you how to think ahead. If we're going to win, we need a strategy." Linda sighed, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "You're right, but this isn't just a game, Mike. It's messy, and it could get ugly." Michael looked at her with a seriousness that belied his years. "I know. But if we don't do anything, he'll just keep getting away with it." Linda nodded, a mix of pride and apprehension welling up in her chest. All right, let's start with what we know. Over the next few days, Linda and Michael worked together like a team. Linda focused on the financial records, tracing the flow of money through Elite Development Group. Michael, meanwhile, dug through old photo albums, searching for clues about James's connections. "Mom, look at this," Michael said one evening, holding up a photo of James at a charity gala. Beside him stood the same woman from the photograph in the envelope. Linda's eyes widened. "That's her. Do you remember when this was taken?" Michael nodded. 2 years ago. I remember because it was the same weekend you and I went to that science fair. Dad said he had to work late." Linda's stomach churned. "He lied to us." Michael shrugged. "At least now we know when it started." Armed with this information, Linda scheduled a meeting with Jennifer. She carefully explained her findings, pointing out how funds had been funneled into private accounts linked to James's name. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, her expression grim. "This is serious, Linda. If what you're saying is true, it's not just unethical, it's illegal." Linda swallowed hard. "What should we do?" Jennifer sighed. "We'll need to involve the board. And if they agree, we'll have to take this to the authorities." Back at home, Linda updated Michael on the situation. "So, what happens now?" Michael asked. "We wait," Linda said, though the words felt hollow. Michael frowned. "Waiting isn't a strategy." Linda couldn't help but smile. Spoken like a true chess player. But sometimes, Mike, patience is the best move. 2 weeks later, Linda found herself sitting in a sleek, glass-walled conference room at Elite Development Group's headquarters. James was there, along with Jennifer and several board members. James looked smug, his confidence unshaken. "I'm not sure why we're here," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This feels like a waste of time." Jennifer spoke up, her tone icy. "We're here because of discrepancies in your financial records, James, and Linda has evidence to back it up." James's smirk faltered as Linda opened her laptop, projecting her findings onto the screen. "These transactions," she began, highlighting several entries, "show funds being diverted into accounts under your name. And this," she continued, displaying the photo of James and the woman, "proves that you've been using company resources for personal gain." The room fell silent. James's face turned red as he struggled to respond. "This is absurd," he said finally. "You can't prove anything." Linda stood her ground. "Actually, we can, and if you don't cooperate, we'll take this straight to the authorities." Outside the building, Linda felt a surge of relief. She turned to Jennifer, who gave her an approving nod. "You did great in there," Jennifer said. "Thanks," Linda replied, though her mind was already on Michael. By Christmas Eve, the house was quieter than it had been in weeks. The legal proceedings against James were ongoing, but Linda felt a newfound sense of control over her life. As she and Michael sat by the fire, sipping hot cocoa, Michael looked up at her. "Do you think we'll be okay, Mom?" Linda smiled, ruffling his hair. "I know we will, Mike, because we have each other." Michael grinned. "And because we always think 2 moves ahead." Linda laughed, pulling him into a hug. For the first time in a long time, the future felt bright. Despite the warmth of the holidays, Linda couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease. James hadn't gone quietly after being confronted. He denied all accusations and even began painting Linda as a vindictive ex-wife out for revenge. "Mom, don't read the comments," Michael said one morning as he caught her scrolling through a social media thread. People were speculating wildly about the situation, and some believed James's version of events. "I know, honey," Linda sighed, putting her phone down. "But it's hard to ignore." Michael frowned. "People always pick sides. But the truth is on ours, right? That's what matters." Linda smiled at her son's wisdom. "You're right, Mike. We just have to stay strong." As the weeks passed, Linda threw herself into her work and raising Michael. Jennifer had taken a firm stand against James, and with the evidence Linda provided, the company's legal team was preparing for a lengthy court battle. But James wasn't finished. One evening, Linda returned home to find a manila envelope on her doorstep. Inside was a single photograph of her and Michael, taken from a distance. A note scrawled in blocky letters read, "Drop the case or else." Her heart pounded as she locked the door and checked the windows. Michael, who had been in his room, came downstairs when he heard the commotion. "Mom? What's wrong?" Linda hesitated before showing him the note. His face hardened. "We can't let him scare us," Michael said firmly. "We've come too far." Linda hugged him tightly. "I know, but I have to keep you safe." The next morning, Linda took the photograph and note to the police. An officer assured her they'd investigate, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. Jennifer called later that day. "Linda, are you all right? I heard about the threat." "I'm fine," Linda lied. "But this is getting dangerous, Jennifer." Jennifer's voice softened. "If you want to step back, I'd understand. But remember, if we let him win, he'll keep doing this to other people." Linda took a deep breath. "I'm not giving up." "Not yet." Michael couldn't stop thinking about the note. He was young, but he understood enough to know that James was desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. "Mom," he said over breakfast, "what if we make him show his hand?" Linda raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Michael pulled out a notebook filled with scribbles and diagrams. "Chess isn't just about defense. Sometimes you have to bait your opponent into making a bad move." Linda looked at her son in awe. "Go on." Michael's plan was simple but risky. They would let James believe Linda was stepping back from the case. Linda would publicly announce her intent to drop the accusations, making James think he had won. But behind the scenes, she and Jennifer would work with the authorities to monitor his actions. "He'll get overconfident," Michael explained. "That's when he'll slip up." Linda hesitated. "This is dangerous, Mike. What if it backfires?" Michael shrugged. "We'll have to think 2 moves ahead." The announcement was made in a carefully worded statement, and James's response was swift. He went on record calling Linda's accusations baseless and praised the justice system for recognizing the truth. But behind closed doors, James began shifting assets and covering his tracks, exactly as Linda and Jennifer had predicted. Working with law enforcement, Linda documented every move. It wasn't long before James made a critical mistake, transferring funds to an account linked to his illicit dealings. The authorities moved quickly, seizing records and freezing accounts. Within days, James was arrested on charges of embezzlement and fraud. The trial was a media sensation, but Linda stayed out of the spotlight as much as possible. She testified when required, recounting the events with poise and honesty. Michael watched from the gallery, his heart swelling with pride. When the verdict was finally delivered, guilty on all counts, Linda felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Spring arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal. Linda and Michael had moved to a smaller, quieter town where they could start over. One afternoon, as they unpacked boxes in their new home, Michael found the old chessboard. "Hey, Mom," he said, setting it up on the kitchen table. "Fancy a game?" Linda laughed. You know you'll win, right? Michael grinned. Maybe. But it's not about winning. It's about thinking ahead. As they played, the sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long, warm shadows over the board. For the first time in years, Linda felt truly at peace.